Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Bite podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Myers, and today I am thrilled to be welcoming Sheri Moise to the show. So, Sheri is an intuitive business astrologer and sales and marketing mentor. She helps seasoned entrepreneurs plan and launch with strategy that syncs with their energy and the right timing. With 25 plus years in marketing and deep certifications in business astrology, Sheri's zone of genius lies in blending practical strategy with cosmic data, helping her clients map launches that convert and feel good to lead. Now, Sheri, I know that you and I met recently at an event, and when you were telling me about what you do, I was like, we have to talk. So please, for all of the listeners here, will you start off by telling them kind of how you got into entrepreneurship in the first place, and especially into blending astrology and business?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. It was such kind of a kismet experience to meet you, and I'm really excited that we are connected and having this conversation today. So, I spent 25 years in corporate sales and marketing and always knew that while I happened to be good at what I did, I really didn't love it. I was selling other people's widgets, and it was a great lifestyle, good income, and it was soul sucking, just to be frank. So I always knew that I wanted to do something else when the boys were old enough, out of high school where I could do a transition. Had no idea what that was going to be, nor what would it entail. And I was just reflecting the other day, like the journey of entrepreneurship is a journey. And I came into it bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like this is going to be fantastic and no problem. I have all these skills and abilities, and you still have to find clients, build all the things that go around to and from it. And it was not a well-paved road in the beginning, for sure. I came out of the gates, tried to do all the right things, air quotes, to set myself up for success. And that didn't work out so well. I was spending a lot of time listening to other people's way. And even though intuitively I knew it wasn't my way, but it was like, well, they're having success, so this must be the shortest path to least resistance. And, tens of thousands of dollars later, I'll really never forget the moment my husband looked at me and he was like, do you think it's time to get a job? And, that question really hit me like a freight train. And not because it was unexpected, but because deep down I already knew something had to change. Life was definitely lifing for me when I came into entrepreneurship. I was navigating breast cancer treatments and I'm all good now, but it was it just while trying to build a business. So I was really just exhausted all the way around and trying to follow all these proven business strategies, the shortcuts, the formulas, but nothing was working. And I kept pushing forward, believing, as most of us do, right? Just work harder. Just success will come, right? I'm sure you've been there, Hunter, right? Thinking, you're pouring everything in, doing all the right things, and you're like, why isn't this working? And I was really drained and honestly, too tired to keep chasing a strategy that was designed for someone else. I'm trying to balance real life. Life is happening. I recognized that the problem wasn't me. The problem was the system that I was following. And I needed answers, and I needed them fast, because the idea of going back into a 9-to-5 paycheck job, not that I ever really did 9 to 5, but that was not on my radar. I just couldn't afford guesswork. So it might seem strange that I turned to astrology, because a lot of people might say, well, but that's guesswork, Sheri. And I'm like, no. It's not a leap of faith. It's practical, data-driven system that really helped me remove the uncertainty and make confident decisions. So finally, for the first time, now it still was a journey from there to get where I am now and to figure all the things out, but I wasn't throwing darts anymore. I wasn't chasing someone else's version of success. I had a roadmap that worked with me, how I'm wired and designed, and that's when everything really started to shift and the road became easier to navigate, less boulders, less potholes, and launches became easier. Decisions felt more intentional. My business started to grow, even in, what was truly a challenging season of my life. So I really learned that a thriving business doesn't come from hustling. harder or forcing strategies. It comes from aligning your energy, your timing, and your actions in a way that work for you. And that's exactly what astrology helped me do. It gave me clarity, precision, and a roadmap to make things feel manageable and strategic rather than exhausting and uncertain.
I really appreciate you sharing how you tried a lot of things in the past and was just like experiencing more and more and more friction. Because I think that so many entrepreneurs can say, oh my gosh, like I have experienced exactly what Sheri is talking about. And that you went on this journey and found a path that aligned with you. And I really want to dive into that because I will admit I don't know very much about astrology, which was also why I was so excited to have this conversation. So how does it tie into kind of business strategy and things like that? Like first off, I guess we should probably start with anyone who's listening. Can you kind of give us a breakdown of astrology, how it works, like crash course us real fast?
Crash course, you got it. Um, so astrology isn't about, this is actually a decision-making tool, right? And I'm not here to turn people into astrologers. What my gift is distilling all that data to tell you exactly what you need to know. So the gift of astrology is that it is a system. It has cycles that are repeatable. So, and it also can show you how you're wired and designed. There's a reason why you're going to do a podcast and I'm not, because I'm not wired that way. So there's two sides to it, the way I look at it. One is what's going on in Hunter's chart. What is your chart is like, it's your blueprint. It can tell us so many things about, like I said, your core wiring and design. So when I work with somebody initially, I'm looking to find like, where are the gifts, the challenges, the opportunities that they are really wired for? How do you actually, what are you motivated by for your goals? What kind of cycles do you work in? Some people work in 2-year cycles. Some people work in 30-day containers. Some people work on 9-month cycles. Some people need, and your chart will tell us that, because otherwise we're building a plan based on everybody's got to create your year out of the gate. And what happens? You fall flat on your face and you're like, what did I do wrong? I'm not motivated by numbers. I'm motivated by the desire to create XYZ. And understanding yourself at that level. And every time I read someone's chart and we talk about it from a business perspective, people are just shaking their head. Yep, that makes sense. Yep, that's true for me. Yes. And we can see why you chose a certain path or what you might be fighting. Like I was fighting certain pieces of who I am, but my chart's like, no, that's what you do. So there's that piece. There's really, I call it it's like your permission slip to just be you in your business and to know what that means. And there are seasons to it. We're growth edges always, right? We're not meant to be stagnant. The chart will tell us as it moves past your birth chart to what's happening now, where your focus is, where your opportunities are. Again, where those spots are going to be sticky. And then so we can really design something for you that supports you. And then the other gift of astrology, because of cycles and seasons, is it can tell us what's going on with your audience, with your ideal clients. It'll tell us where they're focused, tell us what they're motivated by. It'll tell us what they're desiring, how they want to be marketed to. And that right there is the secret sauce, right? Wouldn't you like to know what people are excited about right now, how you need to sell to them, what your sales pages need to look like? So because we have these cycles and seasons that we can go back to, we have data time and time again. There's a reason why when we're in, Aries season, spring in Northern Hemisphere, things feel like a fresh start every time, right? So
I would have never thought, because I'm like, okay, I can understand kind of the personal side, but I would have never thought that you could apply it to your ideal clients as well. And as branding person, I'm always out here toting about, you need to know your clients, you need to know your clients. And I love that the charts and astrology can actually show you the patterns that they are also experiencing, right? Because just like we as individuals will change, your audience and what they need at different times is going to change too. And I think that is such an incredible usage of a tool that can be so personalized. Do you see, so thinking about like the timing and the cycles, right?
mm-hmm.
What does that timing look like? Because you mentioned that it may be different for, each individual person. Is there any type of kind of structural piece that is similar amongst everyone, or is it really truly each individual person is different when it comes to these timing elements?
So we can generalize on certain things for sure. I say if you're going to do nothing else, follow the sun. The sun is like the big spotlight, right? It is where our attention is focused. It's that same idea, like April feels different than December, right? I mean, it just does. And by the way, this is one of the oldest systems out there. Like millennial people have been following the moon, the stars, the sun, the planets to plan their crops, to plan their cycle of living. So there's a cycle to business success. There's a cycle to how your clients, I talk about like trying to sell Christmas in July. Like you can be tone deaf if you're not careful, right? Like you do branding. Like if you are trying to attract a certain type of person and you're talking to another type of person, you're going to miss them completely. So you could just follow the sun because each sun cycle, zodiac sign, has its own richness, has its own agenda. Under Aries, we want it quick, fast, bold. Give me the facts, man. Under Taurus, we're like Ferdinand the Bull. Like, let's make it fancy lazy. Like, I'm gonna go do the work, but then I'm gonna go lay down in the sun and, chew on the flowers. Like, and each cycle builds on each other as well. So that is big picture, the simple way to follow. And I do a blog and a video every sun cycle to give you the FYI. So that's one easy way. You can, follow me on YouTube, Sheri Moise, or at my website and check those out and start to see if it resonates. I think that's a really nice place for people to start looking at it from a collective energy.
I really, really like that. And the way that these, even just the sun cycle, right? How I can, as you're describing it, start to see even how that shows up in business. And I'd love for you to kind of dive into it more in the way that you weave this into growing a business and strategy and the energy around it. Because I know, like, for myself, maintaining energy in business is such a challenge. And I was absolutely like, oh my gosh, Sheri, I feel like I have experienced so much of what you are describing when you were telling us about your journey of just why isn't this system working for me? Why am I so tired? Why does it look like everyone else can do it and I just can't? What is wrong with me?
Right.
And so I'd love for you to dive deeper into enlightening all of us, because I'm just like, whoa, please give me all the details of how this can be applied to business and why, even if maybe traditional strategies were working for you for a while, because I feel like they did for me for a little bit, why at some point they just don't anymore.
So if you ever, I always look at like what season is your business in? And we evolve, right? We're not the same person at 20 as we are at 40, right? We evolve. Our businesses evolve and they have seasons. So a new business starts in spring and there are certain focuses and energies. And then we move, to summer and there's all this energy around it. And then we get to fall, we know what we know. And then we go to winter and we reinvent ourselves in some way, shape, or form. Even the long-standing businesses reinvent themselves in various ways because there's a learning that happens through those cycles. While a strategy is just, I used to call this, before I really pulled it all together, it's like anti-marketing framework. There is no one way, there's just your way. And you are going to evolve. You are going to have seasons and changes and growth edges where, the things I can do and say today at 50, I would never have done or said probably in the same way, at 46. But I have history behind me and I have experiences behind, and I've gone through transits, astrological transits that have changed me fundamentally. And so the strategies that work for me now or how I approach them are different. And so that's why the transits matter, what's happening in your chart. So every time I build a astro-strategic business plan for someone, and we can do that at any time. It does not need to be January through December. In fact, winter is like the most underutilized season for discovery, your inner self. Like think about our ancestors. They would fallow the fields, right? They'd stock up in the fall and then they rested. They're so that the fields could replenish and renourish, and they could replenish and renourish. So I actually think New Year, New You is a travesty. I was around when Amazon created that. But back to the point, I'll stay on track. When I build a plan, we're looking at not just how you're wired and designed, but like what's happening in the chart for you this year, this cycle. Where is the focus? As these planets transit your natal planet, they're activating something. They're making something happen or bringing your attention to something, and we can't ignore it. We can try. And there are ebbs and flows with your energy, and we need to address that. That's why I say, business is not a straight line. Strategy is not a straight line. We have to ebb and flow. We have to honor the seasons and cycles of rest. And that's one big piece I build into people's plans is, not just when they would normally want to rest because their kids are off for the summer or what have you, but also when they're wired to go within. And we can use that time still to move the business forward because we're being strategic. Did I answer your question? I feel like I'm out of went tangential there a little bit.
I am loving it. Seriously, this is so good. And I think in especially addressing that these cycles aren't necessarily our calendar year cycle. And I think that that's something that, especially when you transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, right? Like corporate is very much on a schedule. Even if you think of corporate budgets, right? There is a schedule of when you do things, when money has to be spent by, when taxes are due, all of that. And obviously in entrepreneurship, we've got, some of those same systemic, rigid things that we've got to stick to. But I feel like you've just given the listeners this permission to, number one, not beat themselves up if they're not feeling the new year, new you vibe, which I think, I used to be, especially in the earlier days of the business, like very, very energized, very like, I'm going to do all the things. I've got this and this and this and that, and I'm going to plan everything out for years to come. And now I'm just like, whatever tomorrow brings is going to be what tomorrow brings. We're going to figure it out. And I feel like we don't see that permission or that talked about that much in the business space. And so I don't feel like it was a tangent, but I appreciate the path that you just took us on as you were explaining that in the seasons. And it actually kind of brought up another question for me. Are there any kind of indicators or anything that or maybe patterns you see in your clients that tip off to you what phase or what kind of season of business they are in?
There's some analysis that I'll do because it's not just, you're in spring for a year or 2 years. It's really what's evolved and developed over that time. Are you still nailing down your offers? Are you still, or are you really in that phase of just go mode, like that summer energy of put things out in the world and you're feeling braver than maybe you were before? Or are you in fall where things are clicking along and you're really, now you're in this evaluation, you're getting to that point where, okay, like I've made some traction. Or are we in a reevaluation phase of what's next? How do I up level this thing? Now that even for myself, now that I've solidified, like really put my flag in the ground that it is, that I believe astrology is such a key element to your business success. And I'm going to use that along with my strategic marketing and sales background and my intuitive gifts that now that I've said that, okay, but I'm still this is a new iteration. I've gone through a whole cycle of seasons and now, I'm moving into that summer/fall phase. And that requires a different type of focus and energy than a business that's in spring or winter. And then we personally have that. We each have a season where we feel more alive. And it may be spring, it may not. It may be, when do you feel most energized, Hunter?
I feel like probably spring and maybe fall. I feel like summer is kind of my lazy days. I want to be in the sun. Fall, I get excited as the leaves start to change, right? And the same kind of excitement happens as we come out of winter. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can breathe again. There's green outside instead of just brown. So I feel like there's kind of those two energy bursts.
And so as much as I could read that in your chart, you know yourself, and I can probably find the reasons for that. But we're going to build a plan that honors that instead of like, oh, you need to do Black Friday and you need to do New Year, New You, and you need to have an offer January 1st and be in the fray of all the, but if your energy isn't there, guess what? Your launch is going to fall flat. You're going to beat up on yourself. And you are the most important asset in your business. As an entrepreneur, it begins and it ends with you. And so my mantra is a thriving business requires a nourished and happy you. And so we need to honor that daily, weekly, monthly rest. And really that is how we're wired as humans. The Industrial Revolution, I'm going to go off here for a second. Here's my soapbox. The Industrial Revolution gave us a lot of beautiful gifts, and it destroyed the seasonality, the flow of cycles, because all of a sudden there was this manufactured 40-hour work week. No civilization in history ever worked like that. Why? We're not wired to work like that. And so really all I'm doing and all astrology is doing is bringing back the cycles, your personal cycles, the business cycles, and just putting a focus and attention to it's just how we're wired as a civilization. I mean, humans, animals, nature, all works in cycles.
Well, I think it's so valuable to emphasize this point that, like, we are not robots, like, we are human beings. There are cycles. I love that you got on the soapbox, because it's so real, that you brought up the Industrial Revolution and how that changed so many things in the way that people show up to work. And I think, again, thinking of the transition, because most people don't go straight into entrepreneurship. They're transitioning out of working likely a 9 to 5 or something similar to it. And I know that it can be like, you can sometimes feel like you're doing something wrong when you're not doing the 9 to 5 anymore, when you're not working the quote typical 40 hours, or that you're noticing that it's more cyclical, or even, oh my gosh, like, I don't have energy to make it through the last half of my day. And it's so understated, I think, in a lot of what we see online and hear about kind of in the entrepreneurial space. And again, I'm just so grateful that you're bringing it up. And that you also mentioned that, like, you as the business owner are the most important asset. And if you're not caring for yourself and working with yourself as opposed to against yourself, you're going to burn out first and foremost. And I'm sure many listeners understand what that feels like, or have witnessed someone who has experienced it themselves. And your business is going to hurt because of that.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate this direction that you've kind of taken us. And I want to ask, because I know we're talking about cycles and everything, and cycles obviously, have a pattern to them, but I feel like a lot of people, me included, can sometimes think that astrology is a little unpredictable. So how do you work with that in business? Is it actually unpredictable? Do you work with the unpredictability? What does that look like when it actually comes to, like, making decisions and planning things?
Yeah, I think that's this misconception people have that astrology is unpredictable. It's really much more precise than most people think. And I use it to prepare, not to predict, right? It's like adding a GPS system to your decision making, right? You can, you put in an address where you want to go on your GPS and you'll get multiple routes. When we take your chart and you tell me, I want to build this new offer and launch it into the world this year. So now I'm taking the data that tells me when this planet is doing this or when this is interacting with that. These are what we tend to see. Now everybody responds somewhat differently, because the thing about astrology is it's very multi-layered, but I like to distill it down to the key elements that we can really lean into and use to help us prepare to make the best decision. Because otherwise, really, what are you doing? How are you making that decision? You're guessing, right? You're throwing darts and you're like, hey, I'm going to launch that offer on August 12th. Why? Because it worked in your calendar. And then you're like, but it's not going anywhere. No one's listening. Well, so happens that Mercury was retrograde during that time, or, Mars was whatever is happening. So I'm like, why not use the data available to you? Because it is predictable. Because these cycles now, some outer planets take hundreds of years. But the sun changes signs every 30 days. Mars goes every 2 years through all 12 signs. Venus, there is a pattern and a rhythm. And we people who do what I do track this stuff and can, and we can go back and look and see there's a marketing cycle that happens, which is tied to real estate and finance that happens every 18 months. There's a shift. So those of you who've been in entrepreneurship for a minute, I want you to think about what was 2000 like. That was the heyday of courses, right? If you were around back then, it was like you could sell any course to anybody, anytime, anywhere, right? Like it was just easy. And then what happened? Not so much. 2 years later, it was like, whoa, what happened? Now everybody wanted high ticket. And then all of a sudden, now high ticket wasn't working anymore. And it's not that those things don't work. It's the approach changes. How people want their information delivered, how they want to be supported shifts. Because as humanity, we are growing and changing. We're not stagnant. So it is way more data driven than people. Now, you and I could both look at a chart and I could pull different things from it, interpret it differently. But the information I use to guide marketing decisions is based on cycles and seasons that we have repeated data for, that we know behavior and desires and focus tends to be XYZ. It'll always adjust a little bit, but we can get a baseline.
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just sitting here blown away by what we're talking about. I think it's so freaking cool. I want to know, so as you're kind of working with clients and you're helping them through this process, right? Like what steps do you go through and especially thinking of kind of the results that they get, what transitions do you see in them as business owners, and as people, right? But especially as a business owner, what does that look like?
So if we look at big picture planning for your business, what I find is most people, like you said, they get really jazzed and they start off the new year and they've got their plan and they're gonna go, and then inevitably, X number of days, weeks, months later, life has lifed and the plan it's collecting dust somewhere. When people come to me, they're looking for a different way usually, or my clients are astro curious. They don't want to learn astrology. They're curious about it, but they want a different lens of looking at their business and their life. And they're like, give me the data. Like, if you can tell me what to work on when. So the process is I look at 4 key areas of your business. If you come to me and you say, okay, I have these revenue goals, I have these visibility goals, I have these systems and structures I want to implement. And then I always want to know personally, what does that personal development look like? So we take 4 key areas of your business. We walk through what you want to create, what you want to build, what you want to deepen into in the next, 12 to 13 months. And then I break it down by looking at your chart and where the energy is going to be to give you the most momentum for those projects. And what my clients tell me is it's like they had 50 spinning plates when they showed up in my, Zoom room. And then now they feel like they can breathe again, because the plans I build are distilled down to, I don't put more than 3 things in a category in a cycle. And sometimes it's one thing, and sometimes it's nothing except a journal prompt to keep you thinking, because I know it's a rest period for you. So we get really strategic with your time, energy, and focus, and we let the chart, your wiring and design drive that process so that we can create more momentum and there's less, I love to use the word friction. I find most business plans create friction for people. They feel like they have to or they should. I take away all that, because the chart will tell you what you should, quote unquote, be doing, where the energy is focused. And now if you tell me, I want to launch this membership, and I look at your chart, I'm like, no, can't do that then. So it takes the guesswork out of the process. And now you have something that's sustainable because we're managing your energy, and strategic because we're getting you where you want to go, but we're doing it in a step-by-step way that's based on how you work, not based on XYZ coach's formula. Now, there may be times where I'm like, hey, so-and-so has a great process. This may be helpful to you, because I've been around the internet streets long enough to know who I can refer for what. But most of the time, people already know what they need to know. And, they may need an asset here or there, but now you have a plan built on with you at the center of it, not somebody else's process or system, which is what most people do.
A question that kind of came to me as you were talking about this is about actually resistance. And because I know that, at least for me, right? Like you brought up rest a lot. Rest is hard for me, I feel like the idea of slowing down, because again, we talk about the shoulds. Oh, well, I should be doing this thing. I should be more productive. I've got to be producing, creating, so on and so forth. Do you ever experience kind of some resistance from your clients, especially early on in some of those more rest periods? And if so, what do you suggest that they do, or kind of how do you help them move past that, kind of get out of this corporate industrial mindset into a more natural flow?
So there's a couple ways we do that. One is your plan is I build it, we build it together, you sign off, and then I put it in a Google Calendar. So every time you open up your calendar every day, you click on it and it tells you exactly what you're supposed to be focused on. So when you start to should yourself, which my clients will do, they go to the calendar, oh, that's not a now thing. That's just not a now thing. But they know, because here's what your brain wants to know. I'm also trained in brain science. And your brain wants to know that that thing isn't going to get forgotten or not dealt with. So as long as I've done my work and like tried to pull as much out of you as possible, there'll be a shiny object. I mean, I know who are my shiny object clients and I'll be like, you're not allowed to take another course until X. But as long as the brain knows we've captured all of it, and every day you open up that calendar, like, oh, it's there. It's just, you can go look at the big master spreadsheet and know that it's in there. It helps calm the nervous system because it's been captured. It's like having a not for now. I always tell my clients when they're starting something new, get a not for now notebook, because your brain will then know that you saved it for later, right? So there's that piece. The other thing is we create some rituals, so to speak. What I believe doesn't happen enough in entrepreneurship is the honoring the power of the pause. And so I use new moons, full moons, and CEO days, which happen every lunar cycle, to invite my clients to take a pause, I create a guidebook for them, and with journaling questions and focus, each moon is going to bring up some other emotional aspect. Lunar energy is emotional energy. And so now we're tuning in. How do I want to feel, be, and experience my business? And are things in alignment? And then CEO days, what we don't do enough of, I think, too, is pause and say, is this working? What's working? What isn't? Which is why I build in, you get 30 days of my attention focused after your plan is executed. And then we meet quarterly because it's going to need adjustment. That's just life happens. And you found out that offer you put out in the world needs some refinement, or that some opportunity came along that's shifting where you're putting your time and energy. So intentionality with that calendar so that things are captured, and then taking those intentional pauses to tune in. Now your nervous system starts to recognize rest as something necessary and productive.
Viewing and kind of teaching the nervous system to view rest as productive, I feel like it has to be the key, right? Like, because otherwise you just keep running. I know for me, like, I feel shame and guilt when I'm resting because it doesn't feel productive.
My mindset coach says, she says, her belief was rest is lazy. It's just what you're saying, Hunter. Like, we're taught that 40-hour work week, rest is lazy. And I've had plenty of people come through my world that I know, or friends in the entrepreneur world, got to be at my desk at 8 a.m., got to be there till 5. And you know what? There are peaks and valleys in our days where we're more productive. I was just having that conversation with someone. Yesterday, I recognized it. I had done a planning session with a client in the later afternoon, and I was like, don't do that again, Sheri, because I'm not at my best. I can do this at this time of day because you're asking me questions and I get to riff. But when they need the best of my brain on strategy, I need to do that in a different part of my day. I also create better sitting on the couch at night when I'm tired because I don't overthink, because I am a recovering perfectionist. So know thyself, that's why I'll ask my clients, what days, weeks, seasons, what are your non-negotiables where you really want to create space? So now we're going to build a plan that launches you through those seasons. So your brain and nervous system knows it's okay. I can let go. Everything's taken care of.
I think this has seriously been one of my favorite conversations that I've had on here. So I'm so glad that you are here sharing this. Sheri, I know that we have been chatting a bunch. I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I do want to respect your time. So I want to ask you kind of my final question, which is my favorite to ask people. And I think you'll have, a really cool answer. But if you could change one thing in the entrepreneurial space, what would you like to see done differently?
It's really what we've been talking about. I'd love to see people embrace this idea of rest, and that a nourished you is what really creates that thriving business. Let's normalize that a 40-hour work week is not sustainable or nurturing to you or your business. Let's normalize rest. Let's not make ourselves feel guilty for it. This idea of the hustle culture is really, and it has chilled out some, but I'd really like to see people, instead of the anti-hustle culture, can we just have the culture that respects, honors, and celebrates that we work in cycles and seasons, and that we rest and really take care of our beingness so that we can show up in service the way we're meant to. Because otherwise we're not able to give our clients our best anyway. And everybody, that's not a win-win.
I truly love it. Like I said, Sheri, this conversation has been absolutely wonderful. I am so grateful that you had the time to come and chat with me today. How can people get in contact with you? How can they, I know you shared your YouTube channel, but what other ways can people, continue to learn from you, get in touch, all of that?
Yeah, the shortest path to least resistance to get in my world and get some astro-strategic goodness pretty much weekly would be pop on over to my website, sherimoise.com. There's a fun quiz there. It will tell you what I call your cosmic catalyst is. It's that unique edge that you have that sets you apart. And when you lean into it, your people are attracted to you. So you can get a little astro curious that way, and then that'll drop you into my world to learn more about how astrology for business can work for you. And then you can always catch my blogs or watch my videos over on YouTube.
I love it. Everyone, I will be sure to put that in the description so that you can find it. I will be going and taking the quiz. I'm excited to hear anyone else who takes it. Definitely share in the comments what your experience was. Sheri, again, thank you so much. I know that this was so valuable to me, and I know it'll be valuable to the listeners as well. Like, you are amazing.
Well, thank you, Hunter. Back at you. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Help people build brands, and we want brands that are sustainable. Part of that is the human behind the brand, which I know is so important to you, and how you help people build their presence. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the work you do.